Hi guys, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded anything, so rather than go back and go over every single book I've read this past year, I figure I'll just hit the highlights and the lowlights and then potentially any honorable mention I thought were particular standouts. So in January, I'd say my fave book that I read was Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab, she's going by now. And this is kind of just a continuation of the Darker Shades of Magic trilogy. So if you didn't read Darker Shades of Magic, you kind of aren't going to understand what's going on. I don't know if I enjoyed it more than I just enjoyed it. A couple honorable mentions would be The Bone Orchard, which got a low rating, but I really loved it. But it's really weird. It's weird and spooky. So if you're looking for reads for October that are kind of spooky and weird, I would go with The Bone Orchard by Sarah A. Miller. Again, not super high ratings, but it was a little bit out there, but I really enjoyed it. So January, I had a hard time deciding what was my fave, but I really liked The Bone Orchard and I really liked Fragile Threads of Power. And then I also really liked House of Roots and Ruin, which is the next in the House of Salt and Sorrow saga that Aaron A. Craig is doing. And I really like this. It follows a different sister and it's not on the sea, but another really good spooky one. So if you want, we're coming up on October, so if you want something really spooky and weird, I would recommend try The Bone Orchard or try The House of Roots and Ruin. So my least favorite was Treason of Hawks by Lila Bowen, and this is the end. This is the fourth book in the Shadow series. And it was really disappointing because I'd really enjoyed it up to this point. It was a solid basically 3 or 4 star series. I would highly recommend. It was a solid 4 star series up until this point. But I have to say the beginning of it felt like end of the third book. She left it on a cliffhanger in the third book, so she needed to finish it. But then that only took up the first 30 pages maybe. So then we have to move on to then we have to fill it out with stuff that just doesn't make sense, was, as far as I feel was not built up for over the rest of the rest of the series. There was no hidden anything. It was just wow, and I've got a whole book to fill up. Otherwise, I would really recommend, again, it's called it's The Shadow Quartet by Lila Bowen. And I would highly recommend it. It's definitely LGBTQIA plus, diverse, all sorts of things. It's Western, which I was not expecting, but it was Western fantasy. So I now have a cat. So if you hear that, I'm sorry. So that was January. February, my favorite book was Praise Song for the Kitchen Ghost, which was a memoir slash cookbook for this. And I actually won it in a Goodreads award. Or a Goodreads contest, those giveaways that they always have. And you're 6 million people entered this. And this one was really good. It doesn't just give you the recipes her grandmother taught her and she grew up on, but it also gives context to her grandmother. This is written by Crystal Wilkinson, who's a Black woman. And her grandmother was Appalachian. So she was a Black woman in Appalachia, which is a whole different culture than what Black people were in the lowlands. Okay, this is something completely different, but it's still got, and I need to make it a really good looking recipe for buttermilk biscuits. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge fan of memoirs, but this one actually really good, really well written. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. Yeah, it's called Praise Song for the Kitchen Ghosts. My least favorite was The Spear That Cuts Through Water, which is still a good book. It's 600 pages, but the typeface is tiny and it's shoved together. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's well written, but it just was not for me. I didn't enjoy it as much as a lot of people did. I would still recommend checking it out. It's kind of like a fantasy in 3 different perspectives. I would have liked a little more delineation between those perspectives, because there were times when I'm who? It literally switches in the middle of a paragraph. So just some of those things. But that was my least fave, even though these first 2 months I didn't really have a bad read. I just was like, it's not my fave. For March, this one was, we're starting to get tougher. So for March, it's A Grave Robbery, which is the next in, I believe, the last one, the actual final one in the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn. And it was good. It's not my favorite. And this is hard to say because I love Veronica Speedwell. I love everything that happens with her and Stoker. I just kind of wish she'd ended it at book 5. That being said, it's still really good. I didn't love it as much as I loved like the rest of them. And some of them even weren't like strongest as they could be, but still, it was my fave because like Veronica Speedwell's always a good time, and I can sit there and just read through those books. They're that well written. Oh, then my least was The House of Flame and Shadow, the last book in the Crescent City series or trilogy. I don't know. This book is bad. Okay, I put it as a 3, but it's like a 2.5. Like, there is some legit problems with this fucking book. All right. Within like 3 sentences, I shit you not, she said the same thing twice. I'm like, this woman doesn't have an editor. Like, this woman needs a new editor, or like her editor's coasting or something. I don't know what's going on. Come to find out, I don't know if this is like correct, but apparently she self-edits, which absolutely makes sense if it is correct. It was bad. Like, there's a whole character we can fucking cut out, and yet we're supposed to be getting a 4th book about him, and I'm just like, we don't need him. We could find other ways to get to where we need to go. I would skip the Crescent City series unless you're just like hands down like stand for romanticy. I would skip the Crescent City series. Like, it's not good. Okay, that is 3 books that are over 800 pages. That is 2,400 pages. About 900 of those could be cut out, literally, for no other reason than just being redundant. The Throne of Glass series is good. My favorite's ACOTAR, but it's absolutely just a potato chip series, okay? It's absolutely like not good for you, but I can't stop reading them, okay? In April, so this was another one, like, it was a good month, so it's hard to like pick a bad one. There really wasn't a bad one. My favorite was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Okay, I apologize for that because I forgot to open my blinds. I try to use as much natural daylight as I can to film anything. So my favorite for April was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I really enjoy the Fall of the House of Usher stuff, like especially after the Meg Flanagan series. Delicious. 10 out of 10, no notes. And this one has body horror in it, so like it is truly like some good, slightly more modern but gothic mystery. Like, I like it because it's kind of reminds me of Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So I really enjoyed that one. And then my least favorite was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. And even then, like, it wasn't my least favorite because it was bad. Like, Ali Hazelwood is, again, potato chip stuff. Like, it's not great, but I still like have a good time reading it. And this one is this one is light Omegaverse, and you don't even get it till the very end. And just, it was still a fun time. It could have been a little more like tightened. It gets a little flat, like a little elaborate at times when it doesn't need to, but it's still like, wasn't my least favorite because I thought it was. And then May, we had What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher, which was, again, this was like the second book in the duology. And this one feels a little more like original. And so our character in the first book is returning home in the second book. And we're getting a lot more like supernatural like stuff going on, which is really cool. So I really enjoyed that. So my least favorite of May was The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud, which is part of the Lockwood. It was the first book in the Lockwood and Company series. And it was fine. It wasn't like bad by any stretch of the imagination. It just wasn't my favorite, and I've read YA in middle grade. Like, this feels like upper middle grade, lower YA, and like, it's good horror. I'll give you that. Like, again, another book that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It just doesn't hit for me. But I think if you're looking for those lower YA, upper middle grades, like that good transition, and a kid who's like trying to get into horror but is kind of like a scaredy cat, like this is like an upgrade from Goosebumps, if that helps. So like, I would solidly like recommend this. It was just not for me personally. I think it's just what it is. You know, it's just not my age category. Then for June, my fave was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Stretch. I usually love things by Leigh Bardugo, but this one felt like it was missing something. I don't know 100% what it was missing, but it was missing something. It was good. It was well written, and there were parts of it that I was like, oh shit, we're going in a different direction here. Okay, that's fine. Like, it was, to call it my fave was like kind of a stretch, but still I enjoyed it. So my least favorite for June was The Harlot by the Side of the Road, Forbidden Tales of the Bible by Jonathan Kirch. And this one was rough. This was a 2-star for me. It's supposed to be telling the tales of like seven women from the Bible. And like most of them are unnamed women. And like every time he starts out, he gives the like a less biblical telling of the story, you know, that doesn't use the language. And they'll actually give the Bible verses in between of who this woman was. And like, so many of the times there's essay, and like, I think 5 out of 7 of these stories, the women aren't named. But all his analysis feel like they start off with, well, these women are maligned, and da, da, da. But then it feels like it falls into the category of, well, if they'd only done this or that, it's hard to really like be able to take this man seriously, because he's trying to like, mind you, this book was written in like 1999, so it's before even 9/11. So it's really hard to take this book in 2024 and be like, yes, this definitely applies, especially after almost a year of the genocide of Palestine. It's written by a man who feels like he's got something to say, but doesn't say it well or has the wrong interpretation. So July was not a great month for me, at least in terms of like books. Because my favorite book of July was Moon-Blooded Breeding Clinic by C.M. Nacasta. So I've read The Morning Milking Farm, which is the first in the Cambric Creek series. The thing is like, as banana pants as these sound, they're actually really well written and kind of like got some depth to them. In this one, our heroine is looking to have a baby because that's what she feels like her life needs. So she goes to this clinic to get impregnated by a werewolf because they have really high success rates of having babies outside of their species. But then like they start to get to know each other, her and this werewolf, and she starts to realize like, no, that's not where my fulfillment needs to be coming from. I need to find it elsewhere. And also this guy's, you know, like it's actually really, it's more than what it sounds like. Like, honestly, Monster Fucker books are actually coming out with like some real questions and then answers to those questions in ways that like normal romance books, which not all romance books need to be like, we need to have deep, depthful insight into things. And it's just like, no, sometimes it can be just a good time. Like, Bride is just a good time. It doesn't need to be deep. But I have to say, like, this one was really good in, like, a different way. And then my least fave, this one got 1 star because it's really bad. It is Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. It's this guy who's basically operating on women in an insane asylum. Operating on their genitalia with basically kind of without their consent, more or less. And it's based on a real life doctor, the man who's called the father of gynecology. But the difference between these two, one of the reasons this got such a low score for me was the writing was terrible. I don't understand why this woman's so prolific, and I hate that she's going to be the speaker at a local, like one of the keynote speakers at a local book festival. Like, it's really, that one's Stacey Abrams. So I'm like, oh, good, we're balancing it. But the writing's not good. There's way too many anachronisms for something that was supposed to be about an insane asylum or a mental asylum in the early 1900s, late 1800s, somewhere in New England. But the big difference is the historical figure operated on slaves, on enslaved women. And he operated on them without anesthesia, without their consent, because, as we all know, an enslaved person cannot give consent, okay? And in the book, it's a mental asylum full of Irish immigrants. Let's be clear, okay? indentured servants, basically. Indentured servants were treated terribly, all right? But by no means is indentured servitude comparable to chattel slavery. To take that very real historical figure, she's kind of trying to be like, oh, well, I know that, chattel slavery was way worse than indentured servitude. And I'm just like, this was not your story to tell. Even if you tried to be like, oh, well, I'm not a white woman writing from a black woman's perspective. It doesn't matter. You've tried to pull out and replace that with white women. No, you knew that you would get shit upon as a white woman if you tried to actually write this from the black woman's perspective. But you decided, oh, well, I'll change that narrative so that I won't get shit upon, because most people won't go look up, especially the white women who read my books, won't go, go looking up who the actual doctor was. They'll just take my inspired by true events tagline and call it a day. So that's why it got a 1 star. I'm like, no, this is not okay. And then in August, my favorite, again, another book in a series I love, A Deceptive Composition, which is the latest in the Lady Darby series by Anne Lee Huber. It's just a good time. I love Lady Darby. I love Sebastian. I love their relationship. I love that his dad's becoming such a grandpa. It's so cute. It's overall, it's not one of the stronger of the Lady Darby series, but it's still a really good entry. All those books are either 4 or 5 stars. This one's a 4-star, but it's still my fave. And then my least fave of that was Loathe to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. And that one got a lower. That's a 3-star for me, because one of the stories in there I really was not a huge fan of. I think it was the middle one. It just didn't hit for me. And I was just, granted, that's a me thing. I don't think they're any worse written. I just was it wasn't my favorite. So I'm just kind of whatever. Otherwise, I like the first and third one. Those were good, but that second one was just And that's why I got a 3-star. But it was still a good time. And then I am still continuing. And then through those months, I was also reading manga, which probably would have got higher than some things. But manga are kind of a separate thing. So I'm continuing on with my manga journey of Apothecary Diaries. Because I did volumes 4 through 7, the first 8 months of the year. And I've also continued on with My Hero Academia. My last one has been My Hero Academia Volume 10. I know we're up to 40 now or something like that. It's fine. It's not... I'm more up on the anime at the moment than I am on the manga. And that's fine. I like both iterations. It's fine. I am caught up on Spy Family. So I did get and read Volume 12 of Spy Family, which I still love. I feel it feels like the anime is a little more into their Lloyd and Yor's relationship, but honestly, they're funny. I forget what it was that made me crack up in Volume 12, but it was funny. I'm continuing on with Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, which, God, I love it. I love it. Short, sweet, simple. And then we got kind of Nori, I can't remember his name, the short theater king. He's like, wait, do I like her? And it's just yeah, you do. You are so smart, but you are so stupid. So I got caught up to volume 9 on Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. And then I am up to volume 4 of A Stepmother's Martian, which is on Korean manhwa. The 5th volume will be coming out this November, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm caught up on that, and God, mostly, that's just a good time. That's a good time too, but mostly that's just, that's pretty to look at. That's pretty. So, yeah, that's where I'm at, and, my faves and my least faves, and then, of course, my manga catch-up, and then for September, it's been kind of a slow reading month. I'm doing something for September. I really need to work on that, because I have a few... I'll talk about that in a separate video. But yeah, that's where I'm at so far for the past 8 months of the year. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you like any of them, if you don't like any of them, just tell me what's up. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you around.